Welcome back, Red Spotters! Another show of the Red Spotlight podcast. Of course, we ever apologize that we didn't have a show this past Sunday, but I was literally dying. I went to Disneyland for a day with the family, and my body can't hang anymore. So I was just, and also we didn't prepare for anything in advance, so we just took the week off. But here we are, Red Spotlight, everything that goes on in the world of movies and more, and so much has happened. But that week particularly, not much was going on, and so we had other priorities to take care of. So we're back this week, and at the time of this recording, I can't really be too sure exactly what's going to be in this episode because we're doing a little bit different, a bit of a different format. I'm going to have David on, and then I'll have Peter on if he comes on. So I guess you'll find out at the end of the episode to see what happens. But yeah, for the most part, David and I are here, and we'll discuss She-Hulk and then anything else that happened here on Red Spotlight. So let's go ahead and get things going as a bit of a, I don't know, I guess an epilogue of sorts to, last week's episode discussing all of the, the potential cancellations and disruptions of David Zaslav's regime at Warner Brothers Discovery. The hits keep on coming. I've lost track at this point of the number of shows. The mentality from this new company is if they don't see any particular benefit money-wise, they're basically just at the moment removing as much content from HBO Max as possible with the hopes that they could use that. It's the same reason for why they canceled Batgirl and other projects, because they think they can get either a tax write-off, get some money back out of it, and or in the case with some shows like Infinity Train, which is a show that, David has discussed at length here before as one of his favorites, and one that he actually absolutely loved. They went out of their way to remove the show from the service HBO Max as to the reason, because they didn't want to pay the creators any residuals out of it. And of course, it has sparked, that particularly has sparked backlash from what I understand. And this is a pretty extreme move. I didn't have too much time to look at it, but as recently as just a few hours ago, I was informed by Peter that one of the people closely attached to the creative process of Infinity Train literally created a Google Drive folder and then uploaded all the episodes on there for anyone to see. And I have to just say, I so respect that move because it is downright sinister what Warner Brothers Discovery is doing, because this is the age of streaming, people, and this is why, for all of the people for years and years that were bemoaning or belittling the importance of physical media, this is why we have been holding on to it. Those of us who continue to partake in it and collect them is because you're never too sure, particularly I would even say with shows at this point, you're never really too sure what could happen in the streaming age. It could be gone in the snap of a finger, and guess what? That's what's happening. So much so that Alex Hirsch, one of the creators of Gravity Falls, went on Twitter to basically plug, hey, and given, of course, Gravity Falls is on Disney Plus, I don't foresee Disney taking Gravity Falls down. But then again, we do know of accounts where Disney went out of their way to edit certain things of the episodes for reasons that mystify everybody involved. But anyway, third-party realtors have, the DVDs available of the shows that you want. And if you love those shows, get them. Get them if you really do love them, because you're never sure what could happen. Some things could be changed, some things will be gone to time, or the show itself could be taken down. And this is how extreme things have gotten from Warner Brothers Discovery side. It's not just as if, in the case of Infinity Train, where they took the show off the service, the streaming service. Because of that, people were, it was available to purchase on Amazon, the series anyway, on physical media. No more. It turns out that they're even going after physical copies being sold. And at that point, it's really confusing because I'm sorry, but wouldn't that make you money, not cost you money? I don't understand here, but it's considering the aggressive moves that David Zaslav has made against certain shows, it doesn't surprise me in the least that with the person that dropped the whole Google Drive folder of this show did. So, and we're living in a time now where, watch out, the cancellations are coming. And we, of course, speculated that this would be happening the last podcast. One point of clarification, though, just to discuss the things that we have observed in the time since that podcast was dropped, and that is, it's become pretty clear that at the moment, particularly when it comes to DC films, Zaslav, wanted to create the impression that there's like a 10-year plan now. There's no plan. They don't know what they're doing. And he doesn't know what they're doing. Because in the time since that podcast dropped, there were reported disputes between the heads at Warner Brothers about what to do with Ezra Miller and what to do with The Flash. Apparently, it ended up being a battle that Zaslav lost initially, and then it ended up being going in his favor because what was being debated at the studio was what to do with their troubled talent, Ezra Miller, who has been arrested countless times, who has gone on a crime spree, has been accused of grooming minors and starting cults, and just a lot of really weird shit. And I think that's, putting it charitably, just to label it weird shit. And David Zaslav believes in the quality of this Flash movie so much so that he wants to go and attempt to rehabilitate Ezra Miller. With regards to that, it's really hard how it was just hard, generally speaking, because I do believe in forgiveness, but we're living in an age now where there are so many celebrities that have been canceled for so far less offenses that they weren't given second chances to. So I don't know why we're picking and choosing which star. Now, of course, the accusations differ, so far as we know. This is like the worst thing you can be accused of is sexual assault or murder, rape. That's not on the table, obviously. But there are some really disturbing things that he's been accused of. And then, of course, he has partaken in physical violence, particularly against women, when he's, belligerently drunk. So, and I think he even he threatened to murder the couple he was staying at in Hawaii. So there were a lot of different things that if this had been anybody else, we wouldn't be having a conversation. They'd be gone and we would have moved on. So I feel like, first of all, it comes across as a cold, corporate, calculated decision where the new head honcho is like, I don't give a shit what we got to do. We got to save face, do a hollow apology tour because this movie, we can't, the financial options that we have because, are just not feasible for us. So we just got to go through with it. And we got to make our star, gain back some goodwill, if that's even possible. Because come hell or high water, we're going to release this movie in theaters. That's the decision they seem to have come on. And look, I said this at the time that Ansel Elgort was accused of some things. I guess it was sexual assault. I don't know if those allegations were nowhere near as, I don't want to say that they weren't credible. They were credible allegations. It's just that the circumstances for which I don't even know if you're aware of it, of what was the place of where the alleged assault took place was, for my taste, rather murky and kind of in a gray area. And it was just a very uncomfortable feeling of where it was left at. But those allegations came at a time where West Side Story was already finished filming. So I was very much thinking of not so much Ansel Elgort's well-being, but of all of the stars and, of course, the creators involved in the film. And so one of the things that's discussed the least in this entire saga is, well, what about Andy Muschietti? What about all the people who are attached to that Flash movie? What happens to them? And, you know, all the people that worked so hard for that. So I always think about that, sure. But it's been months on end with Ezra Miller just doing things left and right that are really kind of obscene. And you got the impression along the way that, of course, you know, he issued an apology. That's step one in your apology tour. He said he was sorry for all the harm that he caused and that he was getting professional help. And there are even reports now that suggest that his mom has now basically become his manager to get his life in charge. And look, if at the end of all of this, Ezra Miller gets back to a place where he can be a functioning human being, a good human being, and is better at the other end for it, we all want that, of course. So there's that. But when it comes to him starring in this movie and where that leaves the rest of us, if this is even something that people would want to support, that's a whole different situation. It does create it creates a double standard of like why some celebrities are going to get the treatment of rehabilitation while other celebrities, shall we say, can, you know, be, I guess, thrown away. And it also creates another double standard for Warner Brothers because a lot of people, particularly fans of Johnny Depp, were rather upset when he was fired. I mean, he was paid, but he was fired off of the recent Fantastic Beasts film. All the while, they kept Amber Heard under their employment for the upcoming Aquaman 2, The Lost Kingdom, which apparently Zaslav wants to make some changes to that movie, so we don't know where it's supposed to come out in March, but from what I was reading, he still wanted to, I guess, make improvements to it, whatever that means. So I know I'm laying a lot of things out there right now, but in the short term, it looks as if The Flash is going to come out, and I guess they're going to attempt an apology tour for Ezra Miller. And I don't know how that's going to go over. I honestly, as far as in the press is concerned, as far as box office, if there's a movie called The Flash that comes out in theaters, I think most people don't even know what's going on with Ezra Miller, and they're not going to care. But as far as the press is concerned, I don't think they're going to allow Ezra. I mean, I hope they don't think they can actually get him to do an interview, because I don't know if that's going to go well.
I was going to ask that, like, are they hoping to put him, like, for like a press tour for the movie, to promote the movie? Is that what they're hoping to do after he gets help, or? It's
just a gamble, man, because, like, you never know with him. Like, I don't want to, of course, sound as if I'm, like, dismissing him or making fun of mental health issues. Clearly there's something going on there, and that's not what I'm saying at all. But like, you never know when Ezra can strike. That kind of became a meme. Like when you least expect it. Like it was, like the week that everybody was like wanted to wanted to like crucify Will Smith for doing something that I wasn't okay with at all, and I think was rightfully criticized. But then I think it also went to the verge of overreaction with like what he did. But the week that was happening, Ezra Miller was on a crime spree in Hawaii, getting arrested left and right. So it's like, you don't know what... And of course, remember, this all started back in 2020 at a bar where he choked a woman to the ground. Like, remember that? Like, that was pretty fucking bad. So... yeah. Even if he does get help, like, there's just this level of unpredictability with Ezra.
I mean, my thing, though, is I'm just mainly thinking about his well-being.
Right.
Like, you know, I think he needs, like, a year, you know, to, like, get all the help he needs. And they can't push this movie back further. I don't think so, at least. And so, but then also, you know, what is it? Is it like this whole superstar life that got him into this thing? Like, that's my thing. It's like, do you want to put him in the limelight and like have him go back to what he was doing, or
I think at this point, the prevailing theory seems to be that Ezra and his team are just trying to stop the bleeding and try and like make up as much ground as possible. That being said, most of the pundits out there highly believe that this doesn't mean that Warner Brothers wants to work with Ezra Miller again. Like, everybody seems to be on the same page that no matter what happens, like, even if this apology tour goes really well for him and he does like great interviews, he won't be the Flash ever again. Yeah. And also, what studio would want to work with him? He's just not insurable because of all the acts he has committed. So I guess at this point it's like they're trying to do the best they can, and maybe they'll go away for a while after the Flash happens, say that this all goes well, and then maybe they can have a revival in their career. But it where it really does hurt these headlines is with the lack of work he surely will see, because you don't want to work with a talent like that. It's just not worth it. And this Flash movie has been up in the air for the whole year because of him. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. But, I also want to say it looks even worse with Zaslav, and it looks even worse on Warner Brothers, that all this comes off the decision to cancel Batgirl. Because, and you have to really feel for Leslie Grace, because she did everything right. This was supposed to be like her vehicle to launch her, to her next level of stardom. And her movie was just so unceremoniously thrown in the garbage. All the while, look how much effort the head honcho at WB is putting behind rehabilitating a criminal like Ezra Miller. He's a criminal. Literally, I mean, I think they still haven't served them papers. Ezra Miller's pronouns are they, them. So if you hear me switch them up from he, they, I'm sorry. I'm remembering that I want to respect that, obviously. But it just it's very icky, I guess is the word, that WB is trying to clean up Ezra Miller's image while they really just took a shit on Leslie Grace and everybody involved. Yeah. And that's just gross. And if you've been keeping up, there's a lot of gross that Zaslav has done, like just burning bridges left and right.
I know, and especially because I feel like the easiest decision, I feel like any other decision would have been easier to do. Probably would have been expensive, but it would have been easier to do.
Also, I mean, here's the thing. I guess, like, I know that this guy is about the cost, but, like, look at the headline that was that the Batgirl was canceled, and they took a $90 million loss on it. I mean, sure, you would have lost a lot more money if you just, like, say, okay, well, we got to, I guess, cancel this Flash movie. I get that. You would have lost over $200 million. But what was everybody saying was like that made Zaslav's dick big in the first place on his first day of the job. Oh, wow. He canceled a movie that was done and is going to take a $90 million loss on it. I would have been far more impressed if he just canceled The Flash. And took that loss.
Honestly, I think they just should have recasted The Flash, redone the movie with the new character. Again, that would have been far more expensive. But I mean, imagine the how they could have promoted the movie. They bring in this new guy and they're like asking him like, "Dang, how did you like come into this? How did you prepare for this role so quickly and all that?" And blah, blah, blah.
The press, I think, would have been on his side, on Zaslav's side.
Would have been on his, yeah, for sure. And then also, I feel like a lot more people would have gone to the movies. Because, like, if you remember the Sonic movie, that first trailer, people, like, just talk shit about the first design of Sonic. then news starts coming out like, okay, we're gonna redo the design. They put in like a whole bunch more money on it, and then later on, people were watching the movie because they were like, I wanted to respect the CGI artist, the VFX artist, for putting in all that extra work and all that. And so imagine what the Flash could have done.
Yeah.
And either way, like, yeah, $200 million. It's a superhero movie with the Flash. Like this is the first time we're seeing the Flash in theaters. I feel like we would have made a whole lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter who's playing the character.
Yeah, I think my overall impression, I think Zaslav himself has been kind of surprised at the reaction that he's received with the Batgirl thing, and that's just going to haunt him, I feel, as it should. So I wonder what's really going to happen, because there are still many more cancellations to come, and at the same time, I believe it was a Hollywood Reporter, kind of like reached out to their sources at Warner Brothers to kind of get an update for particularly with all of the projects relating to DC and DC films. And most of everything, again, to the Hollywood Reporter's reporting, was still going as if it was going to happen. But there's just this lingering feeling in the air that most things aren't really safe. Like, there are a lot of projects that, I mean, if you were willing to cancel Black Girl, did I say Black Girl? Did I say Black Girl? I'm sorry, because I was thinking of Black Canary, because that was one of the movies. Because like that movie is happening with I'm sorry. I know that doesn't make it sound any better. The reason, this is the context. There are other like DC character films that are getting made. There are DC films getting made on characters that you wouldn't think that would get a movie made this quickly. So like, Blue Beetle is another one of those films. Black Canary, where like we've been given updates by that report that they're both going on as is. And in my thinking is like, well, if Batgirl was canceled that quickly, I can't imagine they're going to move forward with the Supergirl project with the new Supergirl that was going to be in the Flash film. Maybe they could now. Who knows? I mean, it's confusing. To say, of course, nothing of what that means for projects like the animated Harley Quinn series or anything related to the James Gunn stuff. I mean, James Gunn said himself that he said relax to people that, his stuff was safe, but is it really? All the while, the only thing that's moving forward full steam ahead is the fucking Joker sequel, which, I mean, okay. I mean, that sounds fun. So it's a musical and has Lady Gaga. So I guess we'll see it. But it's kind of offensive to me how that is going full steam ahead, but we still haven't gotten a Batman sequel greenlit. So don't trust them. And I think these last 10 years should have like given us a good idea of where we are right now and where we will be. Never trust DC when any of their executives claim they have a plan, because the reporting is telling us that a lot of the projects are continuing on as is, and that is completely contradictory to what Zaslav was saying and his actions of canceling Batgirl. So, I mean, if all of the projects continue as is, and again, I think all of us were vibing with what DC was doing because they had a very standalone and filmmaker-friendly approach to all of their stories. And that's what all of us want more from Marvel Studios, and they continue to deny us that. So if I guess the best case scenario is Zaslav was full of shit and most of the stuff that was in production still goes through. Worst case scenario, most of it gets thrown away, and then we start from scratch completely. Walter Hamada, the current head of DC Films, almost quit because Zaslav canceled the Batgirl film without so much as even consulting him. And I guess no one's expecting Hamada to stay on, so I guess one of the first things is to search for a new head of DC Films. Some of the rumors were Greg Berlanti, who fathered the Arrowverse on the CW, Reports indicate, though, he's not interested, and I don't blame him for not wanting that job, because I don't know what it is. Like, maybe the answer to why DC has had such a problem these last 10 to 15 years with getting like a cinematic universe off the ground is because they keep getting bought over by new people. The ownership has changed so much. Right now, it's Warner Brothers Discovery. Before, these last few years with Jason Kilar in charge, it was the AT&T regime. Before then, it was Time Warner. And then before that, it was America News Online, whatever it was. Warner Brothers keeps getting like thrown to some new corporate overlords, whereas with Marvel, really all they had was Phase 1 was mostly Paramount, and then it was sold to Disney, and then that's been it. That's, I think, one of these layers that's not been discussed as much. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really weird time for DC, and I think the overwhelming answer at this point is they don't know what they're doing. So what Zaslav is doing right now, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is just removing content to save money. That seems to be his prerogative right now, and whatever else happens, I guess we'll see. And I'm still laughing. I'm sorry. I can't believe I said black girl. That was.
And I was waiting for you to like hear yourself like, you might want to fact check.
No, I
there.
was like, what? I kept talking, and I'm like, did I really say that? I wanted to check in. I was like, oh shit, because I was thinking of black. Oh god. So I'm sorry that I slipped up there. But yeah, a lot of information there, and although I do hear, I've been reading, is there are new seasons coming this year of Titans and Doom Patrol, but sources indicate those shows are not long after those new seasons. So I think those are some of the names that you'll see on the chopping block, as well as Young Justice. There's been radio silence on Young Justice going forward. So again, a lot of comic book fans celebrate when, movie studios or like companies merge. This is why I don't, because so many good projects and so many good creators just get like thrown by the wayside completely just because. When a merger happens, so many groups of people's jobs become obsolete, or they become like unnecessary. You can't have two people doing the same job, and so people just get fired. So that's why all this merger stuff I've never liked. And here we are living through that yet again. So that's all I got to say on that particular thing. I guess we can go ahead and move on to She-Hulk. So for most of the Marvel shows, these last, can you believe, 2 years now? So we first did this Marvel recap, segment episodes when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started their final season back in May 2020. And as a matter of fact, we just crossed the 2-year anniversary of the series finale, which aired on August 12th, 2020. So, I mean, that makes it official. It's been over 2 years we've been doing this now. So for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, and Ms. Marvel, we have been doing weekly recaps of the show. And we're about to discuss the first episode of She-Hulk, currently right now streaming on Disney+. And we're not sure at the moment about if this is going to be one of these shows that we're going to, spend much time on. And just to let you know, because I'm sure you'll surmise from our overall tone and conversation, maybe why it's going to be the way that it is. But to do a little bit of like table setting as to She-Hulk. Well, oh boy. I'm sorry, I need to take this real quick.
Mhm.
So okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and say now, Peter's not gonna be able to make it. His grandfather's having continuous health issues, and he just fell again. So again, I just wanted to put that out there. Our thoughts are with him and his family. He's been basically a full-time caretaker, and he's thus far been unavailable. And I guess this might be a good time as any to announce that Peter's availability will really depend for the rest of, or at least the next few months and weeks, because it's just really tricky. So I just wanted to put that out there right now before I forget. But I'm just going to go ahead and say we're not going to have Peter on the podcast, because obviously he has better things to worry about than being on here. Anyway, with She-Hulk, we reviewed the trailer a few weeks back, Alexis, David, and I, and was rather shocked for a lot of reasons. Yes, the CGI was awful, and it was ugly. But more to the point, I think the overall tone and vibe of it reeked of something I really had no interest in. I just wasn't in the mood for it, considering all the other MCU stuff going on. So I guess I shouldn't have been too surprised to see the series be received so well. I guess that really goes to show Marvel really thinks, I think this is how you can tell that they think they can do whatever they want, and most people will still like it anyways. So I'm going to read this review of She-Hulk right now. I believe this is from the Daily Beast. But before I do, I have a couple of disclaimers I want to put out there before we get into this business, because I feel like it kind of needs to be said. Yes, unfortunately, the right-wing trolls, the enforcers of the alt-right agenda, have once again come out of their caves to nonsensically tear down a show that happens to be led by a female. This is a phenomenon that really took off post Last Jedi, and especially post Captain Marvel. I feel a phenomenon that we at Red Spotlight have been really forefront and vocal in pushing back and covering these assholes, and calling it out for what it is. And we felt it very much at the time, and it has only just, proven itself more and more true of what these people are and why you shouldn't take them seriously. So there was a story that came out this week that before She-Hulk was even available to stream on Disney Plus, a bunch of predominantly male, that's what the story said, and of course we believe it, and of course we already knew, we didn't need a story to know that, but anyway, predominantly male individuals went online to preemptively, again, I want to stress, without even seeing it, give the show a bad review. Which I feel all but confirms everything we've been saying these last few years. And that is, so you're just attacking the show because why? Oh, all right. So I guess a girl is the main character. And I guess it has the She-Hulk in the title. And I guess even though She-Hulk is her own character, maybe you perceive that as Marvel replacing a male with a woman. And that's not what's happening, but even if it was, you still think that's a bad thing? Okay. Same thing happened with Miss Marvel. Same thing happened with Captain Marvel. I'm just so tired of talking about this, but the reason I'm talking about this is because we're gonna have some not so nice things to say about She-Hulk in a minute. And I don't want the air to be, by anybody listening, to think that we're in the same company as Geeks and Gamers or all those channels that are not really in the business of covering entertainment. They're more so in the business of enforcing the alt-right agenda. Conservative, in my view, neo-Nazi politics. Every single time there is any piece of media that seeks to further enhance the kind of representation that we see, or it just happens to feature a predominantly female gaze with, or female characters or female creators or directors, every fucking time they come out of the woodwork to say, this is bad. And you can only do that so many times without it becoming so really freaking obvious what it is you're doing. So, it didn't need to be said, but I'll go say it on behalf of everybody at Red Spotlight. To these people, go fuck yourselves. That's the only response I think that these people deserve. And anything they have to say is illegitimate. Because, like, their concerns of, like, well, it's not that we're sexist, it's that the MCU is trying to force diversity on us.
What's wrong with diversity?
Why is that a bad thing? Because I guess that they think in their mind, oh, it's like diversity is not more important than story, and the diversity is getting in the way of the story. And I'm like, how? No, it's not. Like, so it's all like around, it's revolved around this idea that representation is a bad thing, which to me is a non-starter. It's not. The more representation there is, the richer our stories become. The more, and again, like what, what's her name? Brie Larson was saying all those years ago on the Captain Marvel press tour, what pissed them off, because like they were saying, Brie Larson wants to fire men. She hates men. That's what they were saying. No, idiots. What she was saying is, everybody in Hollywood is a guy. Everybody in power has a dick. Maybe we would get better stories, and maybe we owe it to all of the other wonderful creators of color and of a different gender. If we get them in the business, maybe we can get some new stories. We can get some better stories. Also, that's not right that every position of power is held by a guy. We need more diversity. It's not fair. It's just not. I don't understand why this is something that has to be relitigated again and again and again. And I will say, off the bat, one of the more positive things I can say about She-Hulk in just this first episode is that there were some really wonderful moments by Tatiana Maslany when she was speaking to what it is like to be a woman today in America or in the world. Now, of course, David and I can't speak to its authenticity because we're not women. We're not female. So we will never understand what it is like to be a woman alive today in these times. But from what I have, anecdotal evidence, from what I've been seeing in the reaction, it has landed very powerfully with ordinary women, because or maybe even career women who really have to work twice as hard to just be seen, to not be invisible. And that is powerful. That is, in its own respect, a kind of representation. And if that's all that She-Hulk accomplishes, well then good. People need to be seen. That's why it's important. So that's what I wanted to say about that. David, any thoughts?
Oh boy. I mean, that last part you just said, like, if that's all it accomplishes, if that's all that it accomplishes, then that's good. And I so agree. Because there are lots of movies, there's lots of movies that they don't have good stories in them. Like, maybe you just don't care about the movie. You don't care about the movie, but it is fucking entertaining. One movie that keeps popping up lately is people keep saying Nacho Libre. Like that.
People love
like
Nacho
movie.
Libre.
Yeah, like I feel like if you really analyze it, like it's not a good story.
Fun fact: we're only 4 years away from that movie being 20 years old.
Wow.
Oh, real quick! This year, I think this summer is the 15th anniversary of the premiere of Phineas and Ferb, one of Disney's most successful animated shows, and the 15th anniversary of High School Musical 2.
Wow. Okay. Phineas and Ferb.
Right?
Man, I remember watching that first episode.
Right. Gitcha Gitcha Goo means I love you. I mean, we all know that. I don't know if that was the first one of the first big songs, but...
No, but I remember like the first joke that my sister and I were like really laughed at. It was does anyone want any fries? And then they go to Paris and it's like croissant.
Oh my!
Does anyone want a croissant? It's just I remember we just laughed.
That
so
was
much
such a good show.
I don't know why. It was fun, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it just lots of movies they try to go for something differently every time. You know, what's another movie? Mandy. That movie, I mean, there's a story, but it's not some incredible character arc, emotional, lovely story or anything. No, it's an acid trip. That's all it is, and it was entertaining. Nick Cage was fun, you know, and so. I understand if like they want these superhero movies to be like emotional, to have some great arc or something like that. But not for me. Sorry, I don't really mind it. If there's a superhero movie that just it's all there to make me laugh, like Thor: Love and Thunder. If it made me laugh, it worked. I'm good. Again. I understand some people were saying like this isn't the mighty Thor that's in the comics and all that, and I'm sorry that you didn't get the thing that you got, but at the end of the day, this was someone's creativity at work, and it worked on me.
Yeah. The other disclaimer we'll get into is we have had very deep issues with, fundamentally speaking, from a structural standpoint, Kevin Feige and how he makes these movies and TV shows. Particularly these last 3 years, it has become very noticeable and very apparent that a lot of the personal decisions that he makes really get in the way and become a hindrance to the overall quality of their shows. Now, again, to reiterate, I love WandaVision, despite issues at the end. I thought Falcon and Winter Soldier was very strong, despite issues at the end. Loki, I felt was, I think, exciting for the first 2 weeks, but then at the end, it lost me completely. I think to me that's still the worst ending of all of them. Hawkeye was enjoyable all the way through. I don't think about it often, but that was very enjoyable. Moon Knight, I thought, was very good, and then it ended okay, and then, well, all right. And then Miss Marvel started off the very best of all of the shows, and then ended in a way where, quality-wise, was still a very good episode. But man, all it took was like one da-da-da-da-da-da, and it kind of sunk the entire thing.
Yeah, we went on for like hours just on that one scene, and just how it really destroys the show.
It really
honestly.
does.
Like, oh my god, I can't believe we just took that little thing.
And so, but that's why I'm pissed, and that's why I'm like, I'm not really in the optimal mood to like be charitable to the next Disney Plus show, because I mean, and we went on and on about all the ways Kevin Feige really screwed over Miss Marvel. I mean, of course, the 6-episode thing and all the other stuff, but like, you're right, David. It was very good. It It was wavering a little bit at the end. There were some questionable things, but still, wrapped around really solidly. And then all it took was that damned X-Men theme, and the whole thing fell apart. The whole thing fucking fell apart. And it wasn't the first time that this has happened. It's the same fucking pattern. A lot of these shows started out so strong, and then when they ended, at best we could say there were a lot of entertaining moments, but as far as the finale, I think we've gotten to the point where maybe the most satisfying was the Hawkeye one.
Yeah.
But again, there wasn't much going on in the Hawkeye show, and you can make the argument that that really should have been a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of them had a lot of potential, but why they come across as disappointing finales is because that potential was like thrown out the window. And there are moments in every single one of those finales where, fuck, why couldn't you just be TV and show us these moments that would have made it so much better? So you have to understand that unlike other people or most people who were like, oh my God, mutants, oh my God. We were like, but no, this ruins the show. And so like, we're like in a really pissed off mood. And again, the third disclaimer, we often find ourselves on the reverse end of like, I guess the popular opinion on like what, on especially lately these Marvel movies. Mm-hmm. Like we all liked Spider-Man No Way Home. I don't think any of us loved it though, the way everybody else was loving it.
I was disappointed by you.
Yeah, sure, exactly. I was disappointed by the lack of interesting places that they were even filming, because and all the other stuff. Everybody either was bored or hates Eternals. A lot of us actually quite liked Eternals. Mm-hmm. Shang-Chi, this may be divisive. Shang-Chi, oh my God. Shang-Chi is beloved the world over. Kyle really liked it. Peter was whatever. I really don't like Shang-Chi. I really don't like Shang-Chi. Because I've seen it like 3 or 4 times now, and each time I'm like, wow, I don't care. I just don't care. I think Black Widow was terrible. I think that's everybody for the most part, I think, feels that way though. I mean, it was just unnecessary and weak. Multiverse of Madness, I adore from a visual standpoint. I could look at that movie and just like be entertained by the filmmaking on display. But then I get bored because the characterization's just not there for me. Mm-hmm. And then the second act is really a slog to get through. And then, of course, everybody thought Thor Love and Thunder was dog shit. Like one of the most offensive trash the MCU ever put out. I loved it. I thought it was one of the best Marvel movies from a thematic standpoint. Mm-hmm. Taika Waititi really tied in those themes for what he wanted that movie to be pretty clearly. And so that's where we are right now. And I feel like it may just happen again with She-Hulk, but I know it got a lot of positive reviews, but there were some negative ones. So before we get into our thoughts, let me read to you. It was the Daily Beast, and this is the harshest review I could find. Keep in mind, most reviews, again, are positive. But there were some things that were said that, let's just say, kind of maybe feel how some of us are feeling about the MCU. And the headline is, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, is Marvel trash at its most offensive. Think back to the worst, most haphazardly made monetary glue trap you saw that also cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The MCU has garnered a sour reputation for following the same pattern. Films and television shows are announced at flashy conventions with an increased move toward diversity in stories that will broaden the universe past the 1000th Avengers movie. Then, all of that is almost always sacrificed for the same rote twists and humor tropes. We should be used to this betrayal by now. But what I did see of She-Hulk only got progressively worse. So much that I wondered if there was a gas leak in my apartment. Hulkability is apparently a blood-borne genetic disease. Who knew? We'll get to that. At one point, Jennifer Walters attempts to call attention. By the way, Jennifer Walters is She-Hulk. Attempts to call attention to that using another one of the show's glaring mistakes. Fourth wall breaking asides. And this is a line, not from this episode, but critics were given the first 4 to review, so this is from one of the upcoming episodes. So this line of dialogue will be uttered by She-Hulk in a future episode. I hope you don't think this is one of those shows, one of those cameo a week type shows, she says to the camera in the 3rd episode. Just remember whose show this really is. And the reviewer says, honestly, I was starting to lose track. After an already lazy joke about men skipping out on the tab, She-Hulk turns to the camera, lifts a glass of white wine to her computer-generated mouth, and says, is there anything worse than dating in your 30s? The moment nearly made me hulk out and throw my television through the window. It's bold of a show to think it's this witty without ever landing a single punchline. She-Hulk is filled with these kind of indolent jokes. In fact, She-Hulk is irrefutable proof that Marvel doesn't have a single iota of faith in its viewers. This was another opportunity to throw the rulebook out the window, or hell, at least put it in a drawer for a few hours and make something truly unique and really actually funny. And no, I don't mean with in-universe quips and useless cameos in place of punchlines. I mean with jokes. You know, the thing that television comedies are supposed to be filled with. It's disheartening to watch something that should play out like a delightfully bad 80s cartoon squander every last bit on its promise once more in favor of falling back on a hemorrhaging formula. This is Marvel's latest run in a grand, this is Marvel's latest in a run of grand, ultimately useless tricks to distract from a complete and utter lack of imagination. And while there's maybe a shred of novelty to be found here watching just for laughs with your friends after 3 margaritas, you're better off wasting half an hour on something that will at least be memorably bad when the hangover wears off. This review went for the fucking jugular. They really and I gotta be honest with you. As far as what they were saying about the broader feeling about where Marvel is right now for me, that's how I am. I'm just done. And that's how frustrated I am with it. And the other disclaimer, what we were trying to say earlier is, well, it's so hard to be excited for this show knowing what's going to happen. What's going to happen here is the exact same things that happen in all the other shows. It starts off strong, and then the problems happen at the end, and then at the last minute, Kevin Feige gets in the way. And look, ideally speaking, the idea of a She-Hulk show, now knowing more what it's supposed to be about, is a really ingenious idea. Mm-hmm. A clever idea for a TV show. And ideally speaking, what you could have done was, first of all, hire some writers who know how to write courtroom scenes. Oh, dude. Oh, I forgot about this. I just remembered when I brought it up now. There was an interview that the writer, I think it was Jennifer Gao, she gave, and it was roasted so much on Twitter because she basically admitted one thing we all realized very slowly was none of us are that adept at writing, rousing trial scenes. She was referencing to an idea of an arc they had for the show where it would be throughout multiple episodes, but then they abandoned the idea because they realized they weren't that good at writing courtroom scenes. And the show is called She-Hulk Attorney at Law. And you kind of before we even go any further, it's stuff like this that makes you just like, it stops you in your tracks, seriously, and just makes you wonder what the people and the talent, and I use that talent word charitably here, that Kevin Feige consistently hires for these projects. All because he doesn't want any pushback. He doesn't want any resistance. He doesn't want anybody with a name so they can like push back on what he wants it to be. Mm-hmm. Is really starting to become an even greater hindrance. Yeah. Because it is comical. It is just downright comical that for a show that has it's supposed to be a lawyer show. How many times did She-Hulk say in this first episode? Remember, lawyer show. It's a lawyer show. And you don't hire writers that are good at writing courtroom scenes? By the way, go on network television. How many like lawyer shows are there? Like literally. Mm-hmm. There are so many wonderful writers that you could have hired to do that. And you didn't. And what's more, these people admitted it. What's funny is, I mean, one of the funnier reactions to people about this interview was like, "Why would you admit that?
Yeah.
Why would you admit that?"
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And before I forget, while we're on this, I also want to speak to a particular example for how Kevin Feige really, I feel, mistreats his writers and directors the same way the overall studio mistreats their VFX people. So from that same interview, Gal was asked, "How much were you brought inside the process of creating She-Hulk through visual effects?" So keep in mind, of course, that one of the things that has been largely criticized about She-Hulk was visual effects, rightfully so. It was awful in the trailers. A lot of people are saying, well, it's a lot better in the show. Okay, sure, maybe, but no one's saying it's great, and it's not. And the other thing I wanted to say is, ideally with She-Hulk, knowing that you wanted to make a sitcom, which, go for it. I would love an MCU sitcom, and this should have been it. Mm-hmm. Make it funny and get the right writers to make the show, strong. But if you're going to make it a half-hour show, there's no excuse to not do 18 episodes outright. Or maybe even 22. Make it a network show. I would love that. I would love to see that. Mm-hmm. Now, you might say, as we're about to discuss, well, yeah, Alexis, but the VFX. I'm sorry, but I'm sure there were other ways to get around it. Like, for one, yes, Tatiana Maslany did a very good job in this episode, but you could have hired other actresses who could have made the transition from Jennifer to She-Hulk less jarring as far as like her figure is concerned. And then, because there's so many great actors out there. It's not just Tatiana. But also, was it out of the question to just make a really good prosthetic? Not prosthetic, but like full body makeup She-Hulk instead of like VFX?
Or just hire a different actress?
Or a combination of the two. Yeah. Like, get makeup people and just... Because I feel like that would have been far less distracting. And you would have saved a lot more money than to commit to just it being entirely a CGI. And now, again, maybe for the action I can understand, but no, it's a CG effect the whole time you see it. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you could have, from a practical standpoint, I don't know, found other ways to have done this and presented this better than it is. And you kind of dug yourself in a hole there. But okay. Ideally, She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel, in retrospect, could have been the best shows on Disney Plus if they had just been treated better. 9 half-hour episodes, when your half-hour show isn't enough, go to 18, go to 22. Again, Ms. Marvel, the story was there for 18 or 22. If Daredevil, which, by the way, with every passing day, there are fewer and fewer reasons to get excited about that show. But if that gets 18 episodes, so should have Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. Mm-hmm. And I think it speaks to the blind spot Kevin Feige has, that he couldn't have seen what big hits they would have been. How much greater stories it could have been if they had been given, the right real estate to work with. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to say. So back to Gao, who was answering the question about how involved were they in the visual effects. Not as much as I would have liked. When we were writing the show, I don't think anybody really knew exactly how we were going to do this CGI character. That's bad. That's really bad. Like, you're writing the show and you don't know how it's going to work? Okay. It was kind of uncharted territory. Something of this scale had never been done before. It was a lot of just figuring it out as we went along. Wow, that's really inspiring stuff there. Marvel is this kind of machine. VFX is one of these things where they already have their way of doing things. The machine just gets rolling. You can try to insert yourself as much as you can, but at a certain point, you're forced to get out of the way. Now, I understand, of course, that she is speaking specifically to VFX, but don't misunderstand. Don't get your wires crossed here. What she is saying about this one department, I feel, can be said about all of the departments. Recall, of course, that Kate Shortland, the director of Black Widow, or maybe it was somebody else, but they were told that they didn't need to worry about the action scenes because their action unit would take care of it for her. Mm-hmm. It's the same story across all of the different departments where Marvel has their people. Again, we've long since, one of the reasons why a lot of Marvel films feel the same is because a lot of their jokes feel the same. I mean, it's pretty obvious they have a team of joke writers that pump up the scripts after test screenings of the films or shows. More or less with every single production, they have their people and they want to do it the exact same way with every single project. And that's how it is that you get Marvel films all feeling like they're all the same and they look the same. And that's not good for the creative process. And when she says here, you can try to insert yourself as much as you can, but at a certain point, you are forced to get out of the way. This is why a lot of established filmmakers don't want to work with Marvel, but also this is why Marvel, in turn, doesn't want to hire big name directors, because a Steven Spielberg, a Guillermo del Toro, a Rian Johnson, a Denis Villeneuve, they would not stand for this bullshit. They wouldn't. They'd just walk away, and they would walk away happily so. And Marvel doesn't want to deal with that. What they learned from the Edgar Wright situation all those years ago when he was first in talks to do Ant-Man was it wasn't worth putting up with a director's vision. It didn't matter to them what the best movie outcome was. What mattered more to them was Kevin Feige knows what he wants, and he's going to get his way one way or the other. And that clearly is the priority over anything else, including what ultimately makes the best product, or the best story in this case. And it's also pretty incredible that for the people who do make their presence involved in all the departments. Now, Sam Raimi, and I think Sam Raimi doesn't get enough credit because for Multiverse of Madness. Now, in terms of themes, I will say, because that film was reshot so many times, it kept changing what they wanted that movie to be. But I will acknowledge that at the end of the day, there is still a, if barely there and all too brief, presence of an arc for Strange. Again, to me, it was rather, really? This is what you... Okay, but still, I mean, considering, like, what even Taika Waititi said, that, you know, he was still writing the same scene way after the film had already wrapped, about he was still trying to get Gore's motivation right. Like, again, it's less about the individual people, and it's more so about how the machine operates. And so when you know this is how Marvel works, you understand that the writers are doing the best they can do across the board on these shows and on the films. Mm-hmm. But guess who continues to get in the way? It's Kevin Feige. And it's pretty freaking clear at this point. And I feel like what she expressed there is the truth. It goes on further. I had produced television before, so there was always a part of my brain that's wearing the television producers hat of costs, and imagining a line producer screaming at me and blaming me for their ulcer. So going into writing this, I was very aware of that, but I also had no clue how much the CG would cost. I just knew CG was expensive. From the beginning, I asked Kevin, how much can we do? How much cost conscious should I be? Give me some guidelines. By the way, these are very fair questions to ask. Mm-hmm. And it's very obviously, these are obvious questions. If you're going to be working with a show where your main character, you know, is going to be very involved with the VFX. And he said, this is what Kevin Feige responded. If I'm going to watch a show called She-Hulk, I want to see She-Hulk. That kind of was the carte blanche to just write it how I want it. That's literally all Kevin Feige. That's all the direction he gave her. Wow. That more so than him just like having some really bad creative decisions. This makes him seem like grossly inept, or just like almost setting his writer up for failure because of what happened. And this is what's going on. Because she took it as, oh, I can write as much as I want. Okay. And I remember distinctly thinking, I hope we remember this conversation and the budgets come back and somebody gets mad at me for it. Well, guess what? Well, and then the follow-up question, what happened when the budgets did come back? Were you asked to reshape things so you weren't spending as much money? Yeah. This is what she said. Yes. Literally, she said yes. Once we got into pre-production and production itself, once somebody had to sit down and start figuring out the cost of everything, it was like every week I was told, can you cut more She-Hulk scenes? Can you change more She-Hulk scenes to Jen? Can she be Jen in more scenes? There were a lot of things that then had to be changed at the last minute to go from She-Hulk to Jen. Even in post, you know, we had to cut a lot of shots by virtue just because it was She-Hulk. And it's like, if I were Gal, the writer of this show, I would be so pissed off at Kevin. Because I would be like, dude, I asked you before I even bothered to write these episodes and these scenes, how conscious should I be of this? Like, is there a cap of how many scenes I can write with the She-Hulk CG effect in it? And all the direction I was given was, knock yourself out, basically is what he said. And then we get to the situation where we're having these cost budget meetings, and it's exactly how I thought it was going to go. And I'm like, Kevin, what the fuck? You literally hung me out to dry. I knew this was going to happen. I asked you about it, and you still let this happen. And now we're in a situation where, like, after I've already wasted this time and written these scenes, now I'm being forced to cut them out or change them from a sequence where we were going to have the effect to it just being the actor, Tatiana Maslany. And again, we're getting a lot of insight into how like Kevin Feige runs his ship. And honestly, maybe we give him too much credit at this point, considering all the things that we know that have come to light in the last year about how he runs his studio. Also, why would you want to work with the guy like that? This is really unfair to her and to all the people who worked on that show, because it's like, what the fuck, man? That was bad. How did you react when you saw and heard all of this?
I just hated everything. I mean, so going back to like we're admitting that like they weren't equipped to write a courtroom scene. I mean, my main problem was just that, like, why would you say that? Like, let people know that you're not equipped to write a courtroom scene. Also,
Kevin, if you knew that was an issue, why didn't you make that? I don't know. When you hire people, there's like a resume, like your strengths and weaknesses. How did you not know that?
No, I mean...
Did that not concern you?
No, I mean, for a writer, who's maybe doesn't have, like, their name out yet, or, they're still starting out or something like that, you'll take any job, you just got to figure out as you go along. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure, yeah.
It's just, again, my thing is, why the fuck would you admit that you're really not equipped to write this scene? But also, though, like...
It doesn't help your show in the press, that's for sure.
It doesn't help your show and all that. And, I mean, you just gotta play with your strengths. And so, I don't know what this writer's strengths are and all that. But, if she couldn't write, like, a full-on entire season of a courtroom scene and all that, that's fine. Then just kind of have fun with what you can learn of how... courts,
or bring on writers to consult or to help with the process to expand the writers.
Yeah, room. I mean, well, that's Kevin Feige's job, and he failed at that. I'll admit that. But for the writer herself, like you just got to play with your strengths and you got to work with it. And then at some point, if Kevin Feige is like, I don't like this, you got to dip out. Like better for your career than ruining it. So, it just, I mean, that whole thing is just, there was a bunch of things going on with that. And so,
by the way, I don't want to cut you off, but just on this particular topic, it was confirmed last week. I didn't make the headlines, but it was confirmed that the reshoots have ended for Secret Invasion, but we had told you that there were extensive reshoots, and there was some speculation that they were reshooting the whole show entirely because it was a long reshoot. It was like a 4-month process. It has been confirmed. Kevin Feige brought on entirely different writers to rewrite that show in these reshoots. Not the writers that were originally attached to be on that show. He brought in different people to rewrite that thing completely. So, while we're talking about like Kevin Feige and like his hiring process for writers, maybe he should have been more... I know we give a lot of crap to Kathy Kennedy for her rightfully so, because she has a really bad track record with making Star Wars films with a lot of filmmakers and them not really seeing eye to eye. It seems a lot has happened to Kevin as well. It's just not reported as much. As you were saying.
Yeah. What was the next thing I was going to say?
The thing about the VFX issue.
Yeah. And then with the VFX... I mean, the second producers started going in on her, like trying to cut scenes out, I feel like you should have just scrapped the show and make a movie. Because if, exactly. Again, this is a character who is in her She-Hulk form the entire time. Like, you had to have guessed that you're going to use CGI a lot. Or if you're not going to use CGI a lot, get someone in makeup and all that, if you were worried about the CGI. So I feel bad for the writer again.
It also calls into question something else, and it's something the reporting on this has always been hard to believe, and I've said that, and Peter has said that from the very beginning. It was earlier last year, a report that came out was in regards to the specific... That's okay. The specific budget. Please, Peter's cat makes more noise than you do sometimes. I mean, have you seen how much of a prima donna she is? They had to stop the whole show just to let her out of the room. Anyway. In regards to the budget of these shows, remember what the selling point of Disney streaming was supposed to be. Streaming was... We got the big bucks, people. We can make our shows look like movies. And these Marvel shows, they can definitely look like the movies. And I feel like it's been pretty clear, no, they more look like TV. Now, again, most of the movies themselves in the MCU look like TV shows to begin with, and that's not good at all. But even more so, you can see and feel the budgetary restraints on the TV shows because they're freaking TV shows. And I'm used to that. Keep in mind, for comparison's sake, I want to say that an average budget for an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, to give you like a perspective, was anywhere between $6 to $7 million per episode. For TV, for broadcast network TV, that's the standard. To give you even more comparison, the average Game of Thrones episode in the last 2 seasons was $10 million an episode. The average Mandalorian, the average cost for an episode of The Mandalorian was $10 million. Now, in the case of Game of Thrones, you can see those were expensive shows. You can see the money that cost to put on that production. And this is why we were really questioning the reporting here. Because good God, if it's true, that's bad. But the reporting suggested that with every single Disney Plus show, per episode, well, Disney Plus Marvel, let me be clear, Disney Plus Marvel, per episode, it's supposed to cost $25 million. What? Mm-hmm. You're telling me that these Marvel Disney Plus series cost way more per episode than Game of Thrones? And look, I know a lot of people rag on S.H.I.E.L.D. for its effects. I don't know why. I mean, I'll give you the sets. Sometimes the sets you could feel, and we've discussed how the budget ran thin. Mm-hmm. But when it came to the VFX, S.H.I.E.L.D. had some pretty good effects work for it being a network show. Now, if I'm being honest with you, a lot of the shows don't look that much more expensive than S.H.I.E.L.D. Not really. And they sure as hell don't look anywhere near as expensive as Game of Thrones did. So that's why I really have to wonder, if you're saying that every episode you have $25 million to work with, but at the same time, we have stories like this that show we can't afford it. We can't afford a CG effect every single episode. It's too much money. That doesn't track. Mm-hmm. Those two things don't go hand in hand. Somebody is lying here. And considering what we've seen on screen and what this interview suggests, that $25 million price tag an episode is a load of hogwash. I don't buy that one bit. Unless somehow that's how much it costs to have the stars per episode, which in some instances I highly doubt. And also, no offense to Tatiana Maslany, but she does not rate that much money, considering like how, I mean, in comparison to how big of a star Oscar Isaac is and Elizabeth Olsen is. I'm not saying that she's not worth the money she's being paid. I'm saying her star isn't as big as Oscar Isaac or other, that came off bad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to crap on Tatiana.
She doesn't have the star power as Oscar Isaac or Elizabeth Olsen. I get what you mean.
Yeah, I'm not saying that she's terrible or anything, but that's the whole thing. So again, I feel people need to start calling that shit out, because these shows don't look like they cost that much money per episode. And if they are spending that much money per episode, this is embarrassing. Mm-hmm. It's embarrassing. How can you say you're spending that much money per episode and at the same time force your writer to cut scenes where you can't do that CG effect? Let alone the little to no time you give your VFX artists to work on it. So it's a whole other thing. I do want to say, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., FX Fuse, I believe, was one of the VFX houses that they used for a lot of their visual effects, under the guise of Mark Kolpak, who was the VFX supervisor on that show. To my knowledge, they don't usually work with Marvel Studios. So like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like one of the few like clients for that VFX house. And to my knowledge, you never hear, because of course Kevin Feige didn't run Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That was a different unit. There weren't any issues there as far as like people being mistreated or being overworked and underpaid and underappreciated. That whole thing. So to clarify that, FX Fuse, I believe, also does effects shots for Stranger Things, if I'm not mistaken. Just a little bit of trivia there. So there's that whole situation. And then that leads us to where She-Hulk is. Oh, by the way, this whole first episode was supposed to be episode 8. But at the last minute, they reworked some things, and and now we see the first thing that this is She-Hulk, because it was supposed to be the 8th episode. Which again calls like, oh yeah, that's the formula for these shows. Like the second to last episode is the one where like, now we can pull back the curtain and reveal it. They gotta really stop that. And I in some way, maybe I hope it's because of that really like tired trope that they changed it, but whatever. So that leads us to She-Hulk. We have seen the first episode. Yeah. Where do you want to start, David?
Some of the good, Tatiana Maslany and Mark Ruffalo, they were entertaining.
They were.
I really found Tatiana Maslany like kind of charming and everything, in both her regular form and She-Hulk form. They were just fun to watch.
The casting has been one of the departments where Marvel has never missed, I think. And as far as like Tatiana is concerned, she gave a really grounded performance, and I like her. I think she's the best thing in this whole show.
For sure. I got one more compliment, but it's at the very end. When everything else, this episode was just literally origins. We just saw her get a handle of her power, and I think you mentioned before, like, there was like this big scene as to why she's able to control her anger and all that. It's supposed to be just like the differences between a man and a woman and all that. And although what she said was, it makes sense, I believe it, and it was nice, it didn't feel like some big character arc moment or something like that. It just kind of felt like this is all explanation as to why she can do what she can do, and that's it. It just... Yeah.
I would even argue to say that I don't think that was a moment that was right for this episode, when it's the first episode. We barely know Jennifer Walters. I think the overall issue I found with this episode is the same issue I have with a lot of other Marvel projects, in that it just felt so rushed. Like, I could see a version of this done far better being spread, because a lot of the beats that it hits is done so quickly. We barely know this girl. And yeah, I felt like that moment you were speaking of should have been saved for later. Like, not off the bat. And also, the episode itself felt rushed, or at least it was rushing to get the origin out of the way with completely. Like, it's kind of comical how quickly out of nowhere a ship comes out, they crash, she turns green, then we're in Mexico, and then this happens and that happens, and now we're training, and it's like, wow, this thing really moves. And if the pacing was just like, man, like, what happened here? You're just rushing to get to the end of this origin? Which, I mean, that could be it, because from reports, they suggest Kevin Feige's done with origin stories.
Yeah, that's true. But honestly, though, I got a feeling this is going to be my biggest bother in the entire show, is that first episode, that could have been the writer's, like, season arc. How she wanted, like, an entire court case? No, that origin could have, like, done in flashbacks in each episode. because I got a feeling like we're gonna like see moments in the next episodes where it's sort of where it might relate to their like little training session. Like I'll explain it more, but when like the episode once.
But I mean, I could see what you're saying there. It's like that whole first episode could have been a very serviceable arc for a She-Hulk movie.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it could have been. This whole thing could have been. I mean, yeah, for the movie for sure. Like, you know, in the beginning, you spread it out throughout the movie and all that. I don't know. It's just like my thing though is I got a feeling that, you know, she's gonna have like dating problems in the show, and there was a scene where she kind of like talks shit to Banner that he like cut himself off for 10 years and all that. You know, be alone for 10 years. And I got a feeling that that's gonna relate back to her in that she spent a lot of her time trying to just focus on her career, and that she was alone for that however long it took her to get to where she is. And so you kind of could have put the whole origin within each episode, and I don't know, I just got a feeling that it was kind of like a waste of potential this whole first episode.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that par for the course? Mm-hmm. I mean, shouldn't we be used to it? 'Cause a waste of potential? That's what it is. Like, it's not like what I am seeing in this episode is dog shit. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's that it's very safe. It's very, just generally speaking, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And you can see moments where it wakes up, and you can see moments where it could be handled so much better and easily so, but they don't do that. And then you get frustrated with the whole thing, and it reminds you where you are with Marvel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not going to say I was underwhelmed. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was barely whelmed at all. This pilot didn't really make me feel much of anything. It was just kind of like there, mm-hmm. you know, not terribly bad, not really that good. I would say from a structural standpoint, because this was a reworked episode, I'm thinking if this had aired where it was originally supposed to be, I suspect people would be like calling it out of the outside of the norm for a She-Hulk episode, because look at like what the trailers were selling, what, you know, the talent has been selling this show. It's a sitcom, it's a comedy show. You don't really get that from this first episode. And I'm thinking like, as it was originally designed, this episode was supposed to be like what episode 4 of WandaVision was, where it just like takes a break from all of that and then just becomes the MCU again. Mm-hmm. Which this is what this felt. This was like, oh, it's the MCU. It's another installment of the longest running TV movie universe in existence. It's just another episode of the MCU. It just felt exactly like the MCU. And I'm like, but that's a problem for mm-hmm. me, because it doesn't need to. Yes, like, look, I'm not saying for a show to not feel like the MCU, you have to remove yourself from it. It helps, but you don't have to do that. I understand that with She-Hulk, you're going to have a lot of characters and happenings that happen in the MCU going on. But what I'm saying is, just from like a style standpoint, from a signature standpoint, from a feel, She-Hulk should have its own identity. She-Hulk should feel like its own thing. Like, the feel that you get for She-Hulk should be entirely different than it was from Ms. Marvel or Moon Knight or the movies themselves, but it didn't. And it just felt like more of the same MCU. And as I've been saying, that's not good enough for me anymore. I need this. I would want this to be living up to its fullest potential. Yeah, give it some style, give me some pizzazz, like actually go for it. And that's why, like, a lot of the humor that the show that, in theory, the humor that they go for from a potential standpoint should be great. Like, think how great the comedy is on Harley Quinn. Like that, I feel, is the level that She-Hulk should be aiming for. You know? They should be reaching for that level of brilliance. Instead, they're like somewhere in between. No, I'm sorry. That's not fair to the Guardians to like say that they're aiming for that either. They're in between MCU humor and no, it's just MCU humor. The humor is a big selling point of the show, and therefore you should just try harder with it. And you don't get the sense that they did. Mm-hmm. Like, they get the general area of what kind of jokes they should be telling, but they're not that good. And they're not that original either. Like, a lot of this feels like, oh, they just went on, like, MCU Reddit and, like, read, like, what the fans were, like, you know, what the memes were being spread and what the talking points were, and, like, oh, well, we'll use that and just make that the joke. There, our work is done for us. And so, if that's what you're aiming for, and if this is what it's going to feel like week to week, it's just kind of, whatever, you know? Generally, I don't know how you felt about the humor and everything.
My problem with the humor, it just doesn't feel like this joke belongs to the character. The best example, it was when she transformed and we find out that like she doesn't have another personality in her mind. I mean what I'm about to say, like, it wasn't really a joke, but like it just, this one thing like really bothered me, and it's not something Banner would say. Like, I really don't think he would say this, but like when he realized, like, oh, there's not another person in you, and all that, and she's like, no, I guess not. She's walking away, and he says, bruh. Like, I know it's just a small thing, but I'm just kind of like, whoa, okay, bruh is still relatively a new thing on the internet. Don't put that in. Also, that's not, I know Smart Hulk is supposed to be very chill and all that. Like, I can definitely see him say dude, maybe not bro. I don't think bro. I think he's more of like a dude guy. But to put that in, it just like, no, you're not fitting these jokes with the character. At least I don't think she is.
No, I don't think they are either. And I don't know. I usually really enjoy Mark Ruffalo, and I enjoyed him here as well. Mm. But there were moments where it felt like this doesn't feel like you, Bruce, a little bit, you know? It felt a little bit forced, like, because this is the first time that I think we see him positively embrace the identity of like being all about that superhero life, like so much so that he was like really trying to shove it down, you know, Jennifer's throat. But for most of his screen presence in the movies, it's not like he loves his job. Like, he likes that he helps people, but he's never really been that gung-ho about it. So, again, it kind of speaks to, like, did this character go through a lot of growth that we just didn't see? Yes. We didn't see any of that. But, I'm just trying to remember, like, all the scenes of the Hulk in the movies. And I'm not saying, like, he's not a hero and that he doesn't enjoy it, but, like, he just, like, felt so... He made it so much his identity in a way here that I don't remember it being that prevalent in him, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. For whatever reason, though, and maybe you can tell me why. Why am I not so distracted by him as Hulk as I am by her as a Hulk? The effect, I mean.
I was actually more distracted by him.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Like
I think the shade of green is different on her.
mhm. It's just I feel like I was focusing more on Banner than I was with her, and I don't know, just something about it always something about him felt kind of off with his CGI. Well, with her, even though it was pretty bad, still it felt consistent if through everything.
Consistently bad.
Yeah. While I was with
but
him,
consistent.
it's just like okay, like there's some good stuff here and there, but there's something about you that like I can't pinpoint, but it's kind of distracting.
Yeah. I was there anything else you wanted to say about She-Hulk?
The last compliment. It was that after credit scene. Did you see it?
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Yeah. That was funny.
Oh my gosh, that was good. I love it that we got like a resolution to that, and it's confirmed.
I mean, why did that become a thing? Can I ask you, like, what?
I don't know. I think
Where did that come from?
I wish I knew where it came from, but it kind of makes sense because Captain America, he is that like a Boy Scout, goody two shoes
Right.
guy.
I guess my question is, why did anybody care? Like, what was the suggestion, about it? Like, what did it matter if he was or wasn't?
I don't know. I think maybe some people just kind of like were just curious, Does Captain America fuck? I think I don't know. Some people have weird interests,
Clearly. But yeah, I don't know if this is going to be a show that we're going to cover in week to week. It doesn't seem like it has much going on to warrant that. What did you make of this moment, though, in the episode about the Banners having a genetic thing that allows them to turn into Hulks when they're exposed to, I guess, gamma radiation? Did you understand what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I just knew that because they were related. Well, I guess it's just kind of weird though too. Like, why is it that the Banners? I didn't last trying to lead to mutation.
I mean, it couldn't have been me that I was thinking, like, wait, is Kevin Feige now trying to, like, retcon the Hulk as, like, mutants?
Yeah. I hope not. Oh, God, no. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that is kind of weird that the Banners, it's because of their DNA radiation, I guess, affects them differently or something, which I feel like it is a weird thing to say because, a lot of superheroes get their powers from some sort of radioactive event or something like that, but it's supposed to be a combination of a whole bunch of other stuff, and so
Yeah.
I don't know, it is kind of weird. And it's supposedly like in the comics, it's mostly just because that they're related, that his blood affected her differently. It's not because like they're Banners or something. I don't know. But still.
Yeah. So I guess that's where we're gonna leave it for She-Hulk. Real quick, do you and there are a lot of shows like that are coming out. Do you have any excitement for it? The Ring of Is it the Ring of Power?
Rings of Power.
Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, or Andor? Or all three? The thing is that all three of those shows have a similar vibe where they're about people scheming. And there's like a political thing around it.
More so Andor. I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fans.
Neither am I. Andor looked that beautiful. That trailer was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really good.
It looked like a movie.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also just some behind the scenes stuff that gets me excited about it and all that. So yeah, mainly Andor. Rings of Power, again, not that big of a fan. I love the movies and all that. I listened to the audiobook of the first book. It was fine. Sorry. And then Game of Thrones, prequels. I don't like prequels at all. It just really never works out. I know people have been saying like some really good stuff about Better Call Saul and all that. But
the thing that Better Call Saul is, yes, it is largely a prequel, but it also, from what I understand, I haven't seen the whole thing, but it also converges to the events of Breaking Bad, and then even goes past Breaking Bad. So it's not a pure prequel. I think it mostly is a prequel. It like gives you context about it, but it also adds in like the whole thing doesn't take place before Breaking Bad episode 1. There are moments in Better Call Saul that actually enhance character moments and scenes in Breaking Bad. So that one's more of a unique situation.
Oh, okay.
From what than a lot of the other like spin-off shows. Like with House of the Dragon, it is what I will say about House of the Dragon is I agree with you normally about prequels, but a lot of prequels, like for example, the Fantastic Beasts films, are in a time where they can have characters from the old films but younger. House of the Dragon takes place like over 130 years before Game of Thrones. So the hope is there's enough of they're removed far enough away from any of our characters or their families. Well, I mean, we'll still have Lannisters and the Targaryens and a lot of the same sets as Game of Thrones, but really these are brand new people.
Yeah, I mean, it can still have stakes. There can still be some big character arc moments from these two and all that. I get that, sure, but
I also feel like you, where it's like there really hasn't been any excitement for it at all, because it just reminds me of the end of Game of Thrones, and I'm like, well, and it also, and then it makes the hurt comes back, because Game of Thrones was one of my favorite shows, but then it ended, and then it wasn't. That hurts still.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see it later tonight, but I wanted to ask you what you thought of Dragon Ball Super Superhero.
Oh, yeah.
So out in theaters this week. Go see it.
Yeah, I loved it. The animation was fine. I thought it was going to take me out of it because it's 3D animation and all that. But no, it was pretty good. They kind of made it look almost 2D and all that, but the action scenes were still great and all that. In terms of the main characters, Piccolo and Gohan, Piccolo was the best. He was so fucking hilarious in this. And I mean, really, it's a Dragon Ball movie. I think you know exactly what you're gonna get. You're gonna get big fighting action scenes. What I mainly enjoyed, and I actually saw one review, someone kind of complaining about it. It was like a little nitpick, I guess, but there was sort of like slow moments in the movie. And that's kind of what I like, because this is Piccolo. He's not Goku, where he's just kind of like, slow as in like the story happens. Like we're not focusing on action. We're actually having a story and a narrative. Yeah, a bit. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Not like it slows down like... Oh, okay.
Like,
That's interesting. Yeah, Dragon Ball fans are an interesting bunch. For the last 2 years, I've been immersing myself in Dragon Ball and getting reacquainted with it. And then also how the fandom is, and, you know, the popular talking points. And, I don't know. Like, it's interesting. What you said actually gets me excited, because I do think these are deep characters, but oftentimes, you know, it's a Shonen Jump animation, and so like it goes back to the same thing on the fighting thing, and of course that's what they're known for, and you want to see it. I want to see it, of course, and I'm sure it's good. But I love Piccolo, and I'm happy that you feel the way that you do about the film and him, because I mean, it's been a while since we've had a focus on Piccolo, right? Like, I did love the use of him and Gohan together in the Tournament of Power. The Tournament of Power arc I adore, because it gave a lot of like long forgotten characters a chance to be there and to do things and to feel kind of redemptive in a way, like with Krillin and then others around, and Roshi. So I'm happy that what I hope is, with the success of Superhero, is because this is a Gohan and Piccolo story, and it's been advertised as such, we can have more stories or one-offs like these where we're not always obsessed with Goku and Vegeta. Of course, we all want more Goku and Vegeta. We love them. They're the faces of this franchise. But there are so many other characters who rarely have a chance to like have the limelight on them. So I wonder if this is successful enough and it's received. And so far from what I have seen, it's been received very well. That it suggests the future of this franchise is very bright, at least from what I've been hearing and seeing.
Yeah. But,
And you said you actually liked it better than Broly.
Yeah, a little bit. Mainly, because of...
I haven't seen Broly yet.
Oh, you haven't?
To be honest.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's a Dragon Ball movie. You know what to expect and all that. But that one,
right.
I haven't seen it in a while, but, like, I saw clips of it and everything in the animation style. Like, the animation style, like, for sure is better than Superhero. And it's worth the watch on that. But mainly, I just liked it because Piccolo was a big character in this. Again, he was hilarious. I loved what he was doing. And he was actually like going about it slowly, the whole bad guy situation and all that. Like he was actually trying to investigate, get some information. And the way they went about fighting, it wasn't just, hey, let's punch each other until one of us gives out, or, it was like, no, they try to talk each other out during the fight. And then I think that was really cool for a Dragon Ball movie.
Yeah. That sounds very encouraging. It really does. So we'll see it, and I guess we'll talk about it next time. Other than that, I'm good. You have anything else to say for today?
No, yeah, I'm good.
All right, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And our oh yes, one more thing.
Sorry, forgot. Watch Infinity Train.
Infinity Train, yes. Go on Google Drive.
Go on Google Drive. If it's still on HBO, I don't know if it is. Yesterday it was. But if it's still there, watch it before it's gone. It really is a great show.
Yes, and if you can find the DVDs, even better. You have been warned. Thank you all so much for listening. Stay tuned for more here on Red Spotlight. We got more programming coming at you as the weeks and months continue to go by. In this 2022. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.